Three spine-chilling tales of the cursed, unexplained horrors revealed in haunted places. The sun dipped below the quiet Ohio horizon, casting long shadows across Sarah's meticulously manicured lawn. Life in the suburbs was sweet: a white picket fence, a husband who worked hard, and two adorable kids, Emma and Jake. But that blissful illusion crumbled as night fell, unveiling the lurking horrors just beneath their American dream. The initial unease began with faint scratching sounds from the basement, like nails dragging across wood. She brushed it off. Old pipes, settling house. But the depth of that false security soon unraveled. The scratching morphed into unsettling knocks, rhythmic, deliberate, heart-stopping. Sarah's heart raced. She mustered the courage to investigate, her hands trembling as she gripped the basement door handle. What awaited her inside? The dim light revealed something that couldn't be explained. Symbols carved into the walls, dark, twisting shapes, pulsing like they held a heartbeat. Sweat trickled down her spine as she stumbled onto a loose panel, revealing a hidden diary belonging to the previous owners. She flipped through its yellowed pages, each word pounding in her chest, recounting madness and despair, the tale of a family cursed to unravel in this very home. Suddenly, the air felt heavier, thick with dread. Paranoia crawled along her skin as Emma and Jake eagerly spoke of a new friend they played with at night. Someone was calling to them from the shadows. Their innocent giggles clashed with an underlying chill that froze Sarah to the core. Every night the whispers grew louder, stirring her fear deeper as their once joyous laughter faded into an unsettling echo. All the while, her phone buzzed with cryptic messages from an unknown number, each one more ominous than the last, phrases that hinted at horrors lurking beyond the perfect facade. Panic lodged in her throat as she approached Mr. Thompson, her seemingly too-good-to-be-true neighbor. His smile did little to ease her anxiety. He kept watching, like a hawk eyeing its prey. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." When Mike worked his night shift and didn't return home, dread morphed into horror. Whispers floated in from the night air, revealing truths she never wanted to confront. Mr. Thompson, what secrets did he hold? She learned he was a puppeteer of the curse, ensnaring families, feeding on their vulnerability. That warm, picturesque neighborhood took on a sinister hue. The whispers intensified, curling through the house like icy tendrils, the crawling shadows beckoning her to join the nightmare. With time ticking away like a ticking time bomb, Sarah plunged into the depths of the warehouse where Mike vanished. The oppressive air constricted her lungs, dread clawed at her insides, and darkness hung above her like a shroud. Voices echoed around her, swirling chaos of missed calls and dangers lingering just beyond reach. And then she saw Mr. Thompson across the room, his predatory gaze locking onto her, his hand clutching something glimmering, something that spelled their doom. Realization crashed over her. This cycle of horror was woven deep within their home soil, lurking, ready to consume them all. Would she have the strength to confront this darkness, the twisted fate entangling their family? Or would they fade into a mere shadow cast upon the cursed history of their suburb? The choice lay heavy in the air, and it clenched around her throat like a vice. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously above as Sarah's heart hammered against her ribcage. Each breath felt like a betrayal. Her instincts screamed at her to run. Yet she rooted herself in place, paralyzed by fear. An overwhelming sense of foreboding coiled tighter and tighter around her as she took a shaky step forward. The stench of decay filled the air, mixing with the metallic tang of dread. Mr. Thompson's grin widened, revealing teeth too sharp, too white beneath the shadows. "Looking for something, Sarah?" His voice slithered into her ears, sending a chill racing down her spine. There was no warmth beneath his words, only a cold promise of malice. "Where's Mike?" she demanded, the quaver in her voice betraying her bravery. She scanned the dim room, searching for any sign of her husband, but all she found were stacks of old boxes, dusty remnants of the past, and an encroaching darkness that felt alive. "The question is, what will you trade for him?" Mr. Thompson stepped closer, the light casting a ghoulish glow on his features. He was no longer just a neighbor. He was a harbinger of their doom, a master of the twisted game being played in this cursed place. She tore her gaze from him, dread pushing her to glance at the walls lined with grotesque carvings, symbols similar to those down in her basement. They seemed to ripple, pulsing as if they were alive, beckoning her to uncover the truth embedded within this nightmare. Each symbol felt like a scream, an echo of the horrific tales of despair that had played out within these very walls. "Sarah!" a distant voice cried. It was faint, barely audible over the cacophony of her racing thoughts. "Help! Mike!" She rushed forward, ignoring the warning bells ringing in her mind. The sound echoed from a nearby corner. She moved towards it, desperation fueling her pace. But Mr. Thompson grabbed her arm, his grip cold and unyielding. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. Not all voices calling out for help are what they seem." His laugh filled the room with an unsettling harmonics that scraped against her nerves. Then, from behind a stack of boxes, she caught a flicker of movement. A figure, pale and drawn, emerged. "Sarah!" Mike's voice weakened her resolve. They hadn't taken him, not yet, but could he still be saved? Suddenly, an eruption of whispers filled the air, thousands of voices rising in a chorus of doom. Her vision blurred as shadows stretched across the floor, monstrous shapes writhing toward her. Panic surged through her veins, igniting a primal instinct to flee. She would not become another tale whispered among the symbols. With a burst of strength, she tore free from Mr. Thompson's grip. "I won't let you take my family!" She sprinted towards the figure of her husband, the room spinning in chaotic terror. But the shadows lunged, swirling like a storm, aiming for her legs, their icy tendrils grasping at her ankles. Each step grew heavier, an invisible weight anchoring her in place. Mike's eyes widened with horror. "Don't! Stay back!" Sarah's heart sank. Drawing nearer could spell doom not only for her, but for him as well. The whispers grew deafening, filling her mind with twisted promises and dark temptations. She could feel the curse of the house clawing at her sanity, pulling her into the depths of despair. The last shred of her will fought back. If she could just reach Mike. But the darkness around her surged, and in an instant, an overwhelming force knocked her to the ground. A shadow loomed over her, merging with Mr. Thompson's figure, his eyes gleaming with a predatory excitement. "It's too late, my dear. You should have known better than to invite darkness into your life." A piercing scream ripped through the air, and it took her a moment to realize it was her own. As the world faded into a void of silence, Sarah's last thoughts were of her children. Were they safe, or would they be the next victims of the curse? And just when she thought all hope was lost, she felt a stirring within her, a flicker of defiance igniting against the blackness. But would that be enough to conquer the curse hidden behind the picket fence? Sarah's life hung precariously in the balance, and the clock was ticking down to a final confrontation. The darkness felt alive, weaving through the air like a serpent. It clawed at Sarah, gnawing deeper into her mind, pulling her into an abyss of despair. She tightened her fists, forcing back the panic swelling inside her. She could not let Mike down, not when they had fought so hard to keep their family together. "Get away from her!" Mike's voice pierced through the chaos. He struggled against the invisible tendrils that held him, his pale face etched with determination. Mr. Thompson laughed, a deep, hollow sound that reverberated in the stale air. "Oh, this is delightful. How long have you two made vows to protect each other, when in truth one must be sacrificed?" The question cut through Sarah, but she didn't answer. Instead, she clawed her way back to her feet, every muscle screaming in protest. She couldn't let fear dictate her next move. Fueled by desperation, she surged forward, her gaze locked on Mike, who was still struggling to break free. "Stay back," he shouted, breathing heavily, anguish tightening his features. "It's a trap, don't." But she was already within the maelstrom of shadows, fighting against their grip. They twisted and writhed, cold as ice, wrapping around her limbs and pulling her back. A deep-seated dread clawed at her chest. "Enough!" Sarah shouted, her voice breaking the chaos. She didn't know how she found that strength, but felt a burning rage erupt within her. "I will not let you take him!" As if responding to her defiance, a shadow coiled tighter around her ankle, tugging her down. She stumbled, falling heavily against a pile of boxes teetering precariously. They toppled over, crashing to the ground and creating a brief, deafening sound that filled the room. In that moment of distraction, a flicker of memory surged through her mind. Her grandmother's voice, whispering tales of ancient curses and evil spirits. "They thrive on your fear, Sarah. Do not let them see you tremble." Taking a deep breath, she gathered every ounce of courage she had. Would it be enough to confront this darkness? She wasn't sure, but it was all she had left. She looked up at Mr. Thompson, who was still grinning, relishing the spectacle. "You want to play games?" she shouted defiantly. "Then let's play." With that, she lunged toward him, her fingers brushing against the eerily drawn symbols etched into the walls. A jolt of electricity sparked through her fingertips, shooting up her arm. The symbols pulsed, glowing with an otherworldly light. Mr. Thompson's expression shifted, confusion flaring in his eyes. Was he losing control? In that instant, the tendrils loosened their hold on Sarah, as if the symbols had somehow tethered the darkness itself. But she wasn't safe yet. She could feel the weight of the room shifting, the shadows recoiling as if caught in a windstorm. "Don't fight it," he growled, his voice laced with venom. "Embrace it." The voices surrounding them grew louder, a cacophony of torment and despair. They clawed at her, reaching into her very essence, taunting her with whispers of regret. Sarah focused on Mike's panicked eyes, his desperate plea igniting a fire within her. "I won't give up on you," she cried, yanking on the power coursing through her. She pushed back against the shadows, ripping free from their grasp. The symbols responded, glowing brighter with each ounce of her resolve. Every pulse felt like a heartbeat, a reminder that she was alive and could fight back. But just then, a piercing scream echoed in the distance. It didn't belong to her or Mike. This was a cry filled with anguish, a warning that reverberated through the air. Fear clawed at her heart. What had she unleashed? "Sarah!" Mike shouted, urgency flooding his voice. "We need to leave now!" But leaving felt impossible. The shadows closed in again, encircling them, their whispers growing more frantic. Desperation threatened to drown her as she realized they were caught in a deadly game with no easy escape. And then, without warning, the room around them started to fade, crumbling into nothingness. The walls dissolved, the symbols vanishing, and Sarah and Mike were left suspended in a sinister void. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know, but this is just the beginning." As darkness enveloped them, a sense of dread wrapped around Sarah. She had to confront the darkness lurking within and outside of her. Would they be able to escape this fate, or were they doomed, like so many others before them? In the silence that followed, a low voice began to whisper, promising that not even hope could survive the curse. The darkness swirled around them,
thick and suffocating, wrapping them in a cold embrace. Sarah felt her heart race, the rhythm pounding in her ears as panic crashed over her like a tidal wave. This void was unlike anything she had ever experienced, an emptiness that gripped her stomach and dragged her deeper into despair. "Mike!" she cried out, her voice trembling. The void seemed to swallow her voice, echoing it back like a cruel taunt. Where was he? The uncertainty tightened her chest. The darkness mocked her, shifting and writhing as if finding amusement in her fear. Suddenly, a chilling breeze whispered through the abyss, sending shapes began to materialize. Grotesque figures formed of smoke and dread. Their faces were indistinguishable, yet their hollow eyes glinted with malice. "Welcome, Sarah," a voice hissed, serpentine and smooth. It slithered around her thoughts, sinking in and rooting itself deep. "You've sought answers, but all you will find is torment." She stood her ground, clenching her fists. "I won't let you take me. I won't surrender." The shadows writhed in response, growing more aggressive, pushing against her will. "Every choice has a cost. You're bound to the one you wish to save. Your strength will become his weakness." "Stop!" Sarah shouted. "He's not weak. He's fighting." A flicker of doubt crossed her mind, but she forced it away. She focused on Mike, on his warmth and bravery, the love they had fought for. With a surge of determination, she reached into the chaos, her hand extended as if pulling energy from the void. "I will not give up on him." And in that moment, the figures recoiled, as if her words struck them like a physical blow. But their laughter filled the void, a shrill cacophony that sliced through her resolve. "Love? How pathetic! Look around you. Do you see love? Only the cursed exist in this realm, and you, dear Sarah, are one of them." Before she could react, the shadows lunged. They latched onto her, gripping her limbs, pulling down toward an endless abyss. She thrashed, her breath quickening as whispers intensified, filling her with doubt. "Give in. Let the darkness in." "Never!" she shouted, the word echoing against the walls of the inky isolation. In a moment of sheer instinct, Sarah pulled on the symbols that had once glowed so brightly, symbols that had tethered her to hope. A surge of energy exploded from her fingertips, cracking against the darkness. A blinding light burst forth, casting fragments of shadow in every direction. "No!" the voice screeched, hatred dripping from each syllable as the shadows began to collapse under the brilliance of her newfound power. It felt like a battle of wills, tearing through the very fabric of this cursed space. But just as quickly, the boundless void began to shift, the ground seemingly tearing itself apart beneath her feet. "Mike!" she screamed again, reaching for him, panic surging through her as she felt the distance widen. Was he losing his fight against them too? The light flickered, dimming, just as she caught a glimpse of her partner, struggling against the pull of shadows that coiled around him like snakes. The expressions of fear and determination on his face ignited a fire within her. In the distance, strange hands started to reach through the darkness, grotesque and elongated. They were clawing for something, someone. "Sarah, help!" Mike's voice came out as a whisper in a storm, almost drowned beneath the chaos. "The sacrifice shall be made," the dark voice cackled, excitement dancing in its timbre. "What do you want from us?" Sarah screamed into the void, the shadows tightening like a noose. "Only one shall escape." The room exploded in a violent quake, shadows shaking loose like torn fabric. Fear clawed at her throat. "Fight for him!" The tendrils hissed, drawing stronger as dread crept back into her veins. But know this, only betrayal survives in darkness. An icy chill washed over her, and she felt it,
the profound fear of loss gripping her heart as she clutched desperately to the remnants of light surrounding her. As the shadows closed in again, Sarah realized the truth could be both her ally and her greatest danger. Could she face the ultimate choice? Would she willingly sacrifice to save Mike, or would she somehow wrest him from the jaws of this dark fate? The chaos swirled and shifted, leaving questions hanging in the air like a sinister fog that wouldn't lift. Just then, as she drew a deep breath, determined to fight one final time, a deeper darkness took shape before her, thick and pulsing, pregnant with horrific possibilities. Her heart raced faster than ever. The whispers rose to a deafening pitch, urging her to choose. But wouldn't it lead her into a trap of darkness, one from which no one could return? And in that split second, she felt she'd stepped beyond the point of no return. The darkness swelled around her, pulsating like a living creature. The whispers grew louder, an overwhelming cacophony that slithered into her mind. They poked and prodded, raking across her insecurities, twisting her thoughts. Sacrifice is not just giving, it's losing yourself. Stop, Sarah screamed, clamping her hands over her ears, desperate to block out the tormenting voices. She blinked against the dark as tendrils writhed closer, seeking to claim her, to tear her apart from the inside out. Her heart thudded painfully, a wild drumbeat of fear. She couldn't let them take her. She had to find Mike. Glaring through the shadows, she forced herself to breathe. You can't have him. She focused on the last flicker of light she had conjured, willing it to grow stronger. But the darkness responded with an eerie silence, and then a bass rumble echoed from deep within. Foolish girl, the dark voice crooned. Realize your role in this twisted play. Suddenly, airless hands burst forth, clawing at her throat, tightening like a vice. Sarah gasped, struggling to maintain her grip on the light. You want me to betray him, she choked, feeling her strength fade as the shadows pulled her down. But I won't. I will fight. With each frantic attempt to pull away, a fresh wave of shadows rolled towards her, overwhelming her senses. Panic clawed at her chest, and her vision blurred. She could see Mike again, tangled in a different part of the abyss. His face, twisted with anguish, pierced her heart, reminding her of everything she was fighting for. Sarah, don't! He was hushed mid-sentence, swallowed by the malevolence surrounding him. No, she yelled, unleashing a burst of light that erupted from the depths of her soul. It crackled in the thick air and shot through the encroaching darkness, forcing it back, even if just for a moment. With a desperate urge, she called out to him, Mike, hold on, I can feel you. At that moment, she felt a flicker of response from him, a slight tremor in the air. I'm here, he replied, his voice strained but alive with hope. But something shifted, drawing the shadows closer. The dark voice's laughter filled her ears, shrill and hollow. Hope is the worst illusion, Sarah. It will rip you apart like it did your beloved. No! Her vision blurred as darkness clawed at her resolve. I won't let this overtake us. And with that, she poured everything into one desperate attack. The world erupted in white-hot light, momentarily blinding her and pushing back the shadows. But as the brilliance radiated, she felt a tremor of dread. Somewhere, a heartbeat thudded ominously beneath her. Then, with agonizing slowness, as her light began to dim, Sarah recognized the horrifying truth. It was not just her heart. The darkness answered. There was another pulse, calling from the shadows, echoing from the void. Join us. Embrace your darkest fears, the voice taunted, deeply familiar yet horrifying. And then, from the swirling depths, she saw it. A familiar silhouette, contorted and bitter, emerging from the dusk, with eyes gleaming bright, but void of warmth. Their form twisted. Grotesquely, the specter of someone she knew, yet did not recognize. Sarah, it breathed, a semblance of comfort laced with a creeping chill. You've waited so long. Come back to me. Stricken, she could hardly breathe. The figure stepped forward, gliding closer. Did it belong to someone lost, or was it a cruel mimicry designed to break her spirit? "No!" she screamed as the shadows lunged again, grasping at her limbs, anchoring her in place like a spider trapping its prey. "Get away!" But as she fought, she felt Mike's distant presence slipping further from reach. The fear of losing him surged back, instilling a bottomless despair that threatened to overtake her entirely. "Will you save him, even at the cost of your soul?" the shadow whispered, the voice echoing darkly through the fabric of the swirling void. "One must be sacrificed, or both will perish." The world constricted around her, panic compressing her thoughts. Sweat dripped down her back, and the ground trembled violently beneath her, throwing her into the yawning abyss. Terror twisted her insides. How far would she go? The light flickered as the shadows grew bold, drawing ever closer. "Make your choice!" the dark entity roared, its breath hot against her skin, "or lose him forever." In that moment, Sarah realized she must decide. Hold on to hope for both their lives, or release her own for the chance to save him. The darkness thickened, pressing down on her, and in her heart she feared she knew what lay ahead. Would she dare trust the shadows? Could she risk it all one final time for love? As the abyss loomed closer, questions gnawed at her, and, if I choose wrong, will love still be there to catch me? The shadows shuddered, and for just a heartbeat, everything hung in the balance, waiting, watching, ready to unravel. The shadows tightened their grip, an icy caress wrapping around Sarah's limbs. She could feel the dark entity's breath against her neck, its whispers curling into her ears like smoke, seductive and suffocating. "Choose, Sarah," it hissed, with a voice that slithered through her mind like a serpent. "What is love worth if it leads to your end?" She could not afford to hesitate. The image of Mike fought its way into her consciousness. His face, drawn tight and full of pain, compelled her to choose, even as fear clawed at her insides. "I will not let you take him," she shouted defiantly, fighting against the suffocating shadows. Just beyond the shroud of darkness, a flicker of awareness beckoned her. A spotlight of rippling luminescence pulsed, barely pushing back the overwhelming weight of despair that the abyss embraced her with. "Do it!" her inner voice screamed. Summoning every ounce of energy, she directed the light toward the dark figure stepping nearer. "I reject you!" Sarah shouted, her voice cracking as she released a surge of brilliance that radiated from her core. It exploded outward with blinding urgency, momentarily casting away the oppressive dark. The entity recoiled, hissing in rage, its grotesque form momentarily revealing its true visage, twisted, agonized, a reflection of all her fears. "You will regret this, Sarah," it roared, its voice blending with the cacophony of shadows. But in that instant, Sarah heard something greater, Mike's voice, stronger now, pulling her back. "Fight, Sarah, please!" With renewed ferocity, she stood her ground, the light pulsing like a heartbeat in her chest. She wasn't just fighting for herself, or even Mike. She was battling the dark, allowing her spirit to burn brighter against the curtain of despair. Yet, even her growing resolve met fierce resistance. The figure lunged forward, black tendrils reaching out to pull her back into its cold embrace. Panic surged through her veins as she felt her light beginning to fade, the shadows licking hungrily at her edges. "Your power means nothing," the voice rumbled with deep satisfaction. "You cannot win against the void."
Determined, Sarah pushed through the agony clawing at her soul. "I won't lose him," she declared, channeling everything she had into her light. The intensity grew, flickering wildly like a flame in the wind, but still it fought against the dark. "What would it take?" the figure asked, speaking with a strange familiarity that twisted inside her. "What will you endure to keep him alive?" A shiver gripped Sarah. In that instant, she realized the weight of the question. What would she sacrifice? The horror of the unknown loomed against the backdrop of her memories, threatening to pull her back into despair. As if sensing her resistance, the shadows clawed inward, pulling her deeper. The light pulsated, flickering dangerously, but she held on. Fear transformed into a desperate rage. "I will never surrender." The dark laughter echoed, growing louder, reverberating in her skull. "Both of you will perish, or one shall survive at the risk of the other. Make your choice." It pressed closer, and Sarah could see Mike's face, distorted by pain and darkness. Her heart twisted with anguish. "Trust me," his voice rang out, spectral and distant. But she could feel his presence waning beneath the oppressive weight of despair. "Save him. Save yourself." The words dripped with malice, hanging heavily in the air. Panic constricted her throat like a noose. She felt the heartbeat from the shadows synchronize with her own, a dreadful rhythm of despair. Could it be true? Could she save him? But at what cost? "Make the choice!" the entity roared, a final attempt to drive her into the depths. The shadows surged, blurring her vision and encasing her heart in ice. The light began to flicker, the last remnants of her hope about to extinguish. What kind of decision could halt the tide of blackness? In that final moment, as darkness threatened to envelop her completely, Sarah had a spark of realization. It wasn't merely about sacrifice. It was about determination and the willingness to rebel against her fate. "Maybe I will choose both," she whispered. But before she could act, the shadows lunged once more, a violent rush that threatened to drown her in despair. Just then, a deafening roar thrummed through the abyss, shaking its very foundation. And then, silence. An ominous calm settled around her as she stood, breathless, unsure of what would happen next, the air heavy with tension. Suddenly, a voice, strong and piercing, cut through the silence. "Are you ready for the truth, Sarah?" As darkness gathered, the flicker of hope ignited once more, yet uncertainty twisted within her. Could the truth shatter the darkness, or would it seal her fate instead? The shadows flickered, waiting to consume her choice, as the fear of losing everything loomed larger than ever. What secrets lay in the dark, waiting to be unleashed? The weight of silence pressed down on Sarah like a lead blanket. Each heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out reason, while the voice lingered, ominous, seductive. It felt both foreign and unnervingly familiar, as if it belonged to someone she once knew. "Are you ready for the truth, Sarah?" The words echoed, spiraling around her like the tendrils of darkness, threatening to drag her back into despair. The shadows seemed to pulse with anticipation. She braced herself, still clutching the fragile light within. It flickered around her like a candle in the wind, barely holding the night at bay. What truth could there possibly be beyond this suffocating dread? "Your power is but a flicker against the void," the entity snarled, its serpentine voice hissing with cruel delight. "What truth could you possibly endure without crumbling?" "Enough!" she shouted, unwilling to succumb to its taunts. "Show me!" The entity recoiled, momentarily losing its grip on her. "Very well, but remember, once you see the truth, there's no turning back." In that moment, shadows rippled, shaping into images, flashes of memories, Mike's laughter, his gentle touch, moments of sweetness entwined with malignant dread. They twisted and morphed, turning into something darker as the whispers grew into a tumultuous roar. "Welcome to the past." The entity's voice melded with that chaos, merging with her memories. She could see their first date, the joy glimmering in Mike's eyes. Then it shifted. His face was distorted with agony, blood dripping from those same eyes that once sparkled. A wave of nausea crashed over Sarah. "No! Stop!" But the darkness was relentless, spinning her deeper into the horrors of her shared history. Their fights, his secrets, the times he'd retreated into shadows of his own. "Do you see what love can create?" it taunted, its form bending and swirling like smoke. "These moments are but echoes. You could have spared yourself all the pain, all the despair." A shard of fear pierced her heart. What if the entity was right? What if love didn't save them after all? She could see herself growing distant, the shadows tainting everything she held dear. Love had driven them together, but now it threatened to spiral into an abyss where hope and light were extinguished forever. "There's no meaning."
"Pain, Sarah," it continued as images cascaded through her mind. "Why not let it go? Let him go." Sarah felt the oppressive grip of despair tightening around her throat. Images of their happiest moments, interspersed with shadows of betrayal, flickered before her. Mike had always struggled, but there had been times he looked her way and with all the warmth in his heart promised her forever. "Fight it," she screamed, pushing against the suppressive darkness. "I won't let you take my choice." But the connection was relentless. A wave of confusion crashed over her, each heartbeat intertwining with a memory, a moment of sorrow. After all they had been through, could she really throw it all away? Wouldn't it be easier to forget? The entity coiled closer, its breath cold and suffocating. Numb the pain? Embrace the darkness? No! Each denial brought strength, but the shadows surged, suffusing her with despair. In that final moment, she felt the fragile thread of light she held begin to waver. "Mike!" she cried, her voice piercing through the clamor. "I need you!" The tension froze, and in that glade of silence her plea reverberated. The darkness twisted, caught momentarily off guard, as if it hesitated, releasing its suffocating hold. But just as quickly it lunged back, wrathful. "Your precious light won't save you, Sarah. It will only create more shadows." She clenched her fists. "You don't know what I'm capable of." The shadows hissed, and the air rippled. From the depths of the darkness, a figure began to materialize, a silhouette she recognized. "Sarah." A voice reached out, echoing through the dark. Her heart raced. Was it truly him? Mike! The panic swelled as she fought against the tightening shadows. They threatened to pull her back, but the figure's presence was a beacon in the enshrouding chaos. "Fight for us," he shouted, urgency sharp in his voice. "Don't let them win." As hope surged anew, the entity shrieked in fury, feeling its grip weaken. For the first time, she sensed a shift in the balance, a fleeting chance that maybe, just maybe, she could defy the dark. But as shadows writhed, she realized the looming question remained. How far would she go to hold on to her love?
In that precarious moment, she understood the truth was a double-edged sword. And as Mike reached for her, she wondered, would love be enough, or would it cost them everything? Heavy silence enveloped as they stared into the eyes of despair, both holding their breath, trembling on the edge of fate. What dangerous revelations awaited them in the darkness, now closing in again? The shadows slackened briefly, as if reconsidering their assault in the presence of Mike. Sarah clung to the flickering light like a life raft, but the moment was fleeting. A loud, guttural growl reverberated through the void, and the entity lashed out again, a serpent of darkness seeking to reclaim its prey. "Do you think he can save you?" it snarled, twisting the shadows into a monstrous form that darted towards Mike, who stood resolutely, arms outstretched. "Your love is a weakness." "Love isn't weakness," she shouted defiantly, her voice a fragile shield against the chaos. "It's our strength." The entity's laughter echoed eerily, morphing into twisted notes that burrowed into Sarah's mind, dawning doubt that spread like venom. "Strength? What strength? Look around you. You are nothing but a flicker in the dark, and—" The shadows enveloped Mike, fingers of darkness wrapping around him like chains. "No!" Panic surged through her body, radiating in ice-cold tendrils. She fought against the urge to let go, but desperation clawed at her. Sarah surged forward, heart racing as she neared him, shadowy hands grasping at her, pulling her back. "Hold on!" Mike's voice sliced through the tempest. "I'm here! We'll get through this together!" The shadows echoed his words mockingly, distorting the genuine warmth. "Together? Do you truly believe that? Together is a lie, Sarah. You are woven in his pain, tangled in his darkness." "I'd rather embrace the darkness with him than drown in it alone." Her shout broke through the din, and she plunged forward, grasping for the warmth of his hand. The moment their fingers touched, she felt a sudden jolt, a rush of energy that surged through them, fighting back against the consuming darkness. They were no longer just individuals. They were a single flickering flame, pushed against the gusty winds of despair. But the entity reacted with a renewed fury. "Foolish mortals, I will tear you apart." The shadows recoiled slightly, then surged, swirling and crashing like waves against a rocky shore. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest. The connections mattered. She felt the weight of her emotions grounding her. "Fight back, Mike!" she cried, redirecting her fear into determination. "Fight for each other!" With a roar of defiance, Mike summoned all his strength. "We won't let you take us!" His voice rang with authority, bolstered by her belief, a dynamic current strong enough to push against the shadows. The entity shrieked, the sound piercing as it writhed, threatened by the resilience of their united stance. "You think this is over? This is just the beginning! You'll see, there's nowhere to hide." Suddenly, the shadows began to loosen. They twisted, contorted, and realigned, revealing the pale reflections of hope interspersed amidst the darkness. "Where's the truth?" Sarah shouted, trying to pierce through the chaos with her forceful clarity. "If love is truly powerful, then show us." The room darkened even more, engulfing them, until a flood of light erupted from their clasped hands. "No!" the entity howled, as the light expanded, casting the oppressive darkness aside, if only for a moment. But Sarah felt the pulse of the darkness, still lurking, watching, waiting. "I can feel it growing restless," she murmured, dread creeping into her soul. "There's more to uncover." In the aftermath of the blinding flash, reality shifted. A doorway opened, warped, flickering.
"What is that?" Mike breathed, both mesmerized and horrified. Her eyes widened as she looked into the dim corridor beyond. It whispered of secrets, of truths buried deep beneath layers of darkness. "I think it's another chance, but how much truth can we bear?" As they stood on the precipice, shadows gathered at the entrance. An overwhelming surge of dread clawed at her throat, but their hands remained intertwined. What waited on the other side could bring liberation or their ultimate doom. The flickering light dimmed again, but Sarah held tightly on to hope. Do we dare step into the unknown? That question hung heavily in the air, teetering on the brink of revelation and horror. As they stood poised at the threshold, the only answer lay just beyond the darkness, waiting, hungry. Just past the threshold, the air felt thick, almost alive. Sarah's breath trembled, caught in her throat like the prey of a predator. Clinging to Mike, she stepped into the corridor, bracing for a wave of darkness to crash down upon them once more. Instead, a bitter chill enveloped them, as if the very walls were frozen in time. The flickering light from their clasped hands cast treacherous shadows along the corridor, stretching fingers that pointed at the unseen fate ahead. Each step echoed ominously in the hollow silence, reverberating like a drumbeat heralding doom. "Stay close," Mike whispered, his grip tightening around her hand as they advanced into the unknown. They moved past doors hanging slightly ajar, each one revealing glimpses of unsettling scenes frozen in shadows. A child's laughter, sickly sweet and tainted, echoed from one room. Sarah paused, her heart racing, when the sound twisted into a wretched cry. The walls trembled with a low growl, as if the place itself was warning them to turn back. "What was that?" Sarah stammered, dread pooling like ice in her stomach. "I don't know," Mike replied, voice steady yet strained. "But we have to keep moving. We're stronger together." A sudden flicker in the air buzzed with static, and the corridor narrowed, walls contracting like a serpent's embrace. The darkness thickened again, wrapping around them, pushing cold fingers into their minds. Whispers filled the space, racing through her brain, taunting her with her fears. "Your weakness, Sarah, it calls to you," they hissed, words winding around her heart like a noose. "You can't escape what you are." "No!" she screamed, the sound exploding in the confined space, ricocheting off the walls. "You're lying. My love for him is my strength." Yet doubt flickered, unwelcome, in the edges of her mind. Memories danced, the way Mike looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, shadows of his despair lurking just beneath the surface. "Stop it!" Mike yelled, his urgency breaking through her spiral of self-doubt. "Don't listen. You are not alone. I'm here." The corridor seemed to resonate with their raw emotions. Shadows flickered, swirling into a vortex around them, threatening to pull Sarah
and Mike apart. They struggled against the force, and the entity's laughter reverberated deep, filling the space with sinister delight. "You don't belong here," it belted out, distorting their surroundings into a nightmarish landscape of twisted reality. "You're merely trespassing on the edge of despair." Sarah felt Mike's pulse racing beside her, a steady metronome of defiance. "Let's fight," he said, eyes aflame with determination. "We can't give in." Together they charged forward, light bursting from their hands, illuminating the dark corridor like the dawn breaking after an eternal night. The shadows recoiled, churning as if in pain. With the resolve shared between them, they pushed deeper into the heart of the empty corridor. They reached a large, cracked door at the end, heavy and weathered, as if it had not been opened in a century. Strange symbols scarred its surface, pulsating with an unnatural energy. "What do you think is inside?" she asked, breath hitching with trepidation. Mike replied, "Only one way to find out." A grim determination etched onto his features. Before she could respond, shadows coiled around their feet, pulling at them, trying to drag them back into the void. Panic ignited in Sarah's chest. The whispers grew louder, drowning out her thoughts. "Open it. You'll wish you hadn't." With trembling hands, Mike welcomed the foreboding energy thrumming from the door. "We won't fall back. Together, right? Together." As they stood together, ready to face whatever horrid truth waited inside, the door creaked open, darkness spilling forth like a tidal wave, threatening to swallow them whole. A haunting laughter erupted behind them, echoing through the corridor. "Welcome to your reckoning." And as they crossed the threshold, Sarah wondered if confronting the truth would empower them or doom them to a fate worse than the shadows they were fleeing. What lay on the other side could ignite their greatest fears, or finally unleash the truth long buried beneath the weight of darkness. The doorway beckoned, secrets swirling in its depths, waiting to be revealed. But would they emerge stronger? Or would they simply become another echo in the void? The dark corridor exploded into chaos as Sarah and Mike stepped through the threshold, their hearts pounding in unison. The air shimmered with an unsettling energy, thick like fog, wrapping around them as they ventured forward. The walls pulsed rhythmically, shadows twisting with anticipation, as if the darkness were alive, hungry for its next victims. "Stay close," Mike whispered, determination chiseled into every line of his face. They held hands tightly, the bond between them igniting a flicker of warmth against the encroaching cold. Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed, rising like a storm. "You seek the truth. Embrace your fate." The walls seemed to contract, pulsating, as twisted shapes flickered in and out of existence around them, gnashing with sharp teeth and glowing eyes, reminding them both of their deepest fears. "I won't let it take you." Sarah clenched her fists, refusing to buckle under the pressure. Her voice rang out, startling even herself. "We won't fall for your games." The shadows reared back momentarily, as if surprised, then surged forward with insidious glee. "You cannot escape reality. You are ensnared by your own fears." "Do not listen," Mike shouted, each word a steady anchor. "You are stronger than this." His voice cut through the noise, pulling Sarah back to focus. As they pressed on through the nightmare, grotesque memories danced across the walls, images of their past, moments of love twisted into anguished shadows. Their laughter fused with cries of despair, a symphony of what had been and what could never be. Terror clawed at Sarah's heart. "They can't define us, Mike." She leaned into him, reminding herself of their history, the joy, the laughter, and the tender moments of love that had been between them. But as if sensing their resolve, the shadows thickened. "Your love is a chain binding you to this fate," the voice hissed, an echo reverberating through the hall. "One must be sacrificed." "No!" Sarah screamed, shaking with newfound vigor. "We choose our path."
Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from their clasped hands, illuminating the corridor with a blinding brilliance that sent the shadows writhing. The darkness shrieked, recoiling as sparks of light ignited the air around them. "Feel the power of love!" Mike's voice thundered against the cacophony, a rallying cry against the encroaching despair. The shadows unraveled like threads, revealing their true forms, flickering facades of ghosts long forgotten, trapped by their own fears. A swirling vortex opened before them, a portal to freedom. "Do you dare to enter?" the dark voice taunted, but its tone was now laced with desperation, fear creeping into its depths. "Only the brave can survive the truth that lies beyond." With his hand still tightly gripping hers, Mike nodded. "Together?" "Together," she affirmed, strength surging through her veins. They stepped into the light, emboldened by their love, casting aside the shadows that sought to consume them. As they entered the new realm, they found themselves in a vast expanse, where echoes of light danced around them, shimmering and alive. It felt like a dreamscape, vibrant and unfettered. Shadows lurked, but this time they seemed distant, no longer foiling their way. "Welcome to the truth," a soft voice echoed, transforming into a figure before them. It wove in and out of sight, a shimmering mirage that drew them closer. "You have come to face your realities. Are you prepared to confront what you've hidden?" "What do you mean?" Sarah's heart raced, instinctively drawn to the figure, yet wary of the depths it could unveil. "Pain and love are intertwined. You must accept your histories to march forward," it explained, its tone soothing but firm. Mike took a breath, watching Sarah thoughtfully. "We've faced so much together. We have to accept the good and the bad, right?" Sarah nodded, feeling a wave of comprehension wash over them. Pain was a star they shared. It was their journey, shaping who they were. "Let